Immersed robot.
Hello, so I'm currently in No Man's Sky, jumping back in here again just to check it out with the Pimax Crystal, and I've just spent a few minutes tweaking the settings very slightly. I've not really done too much yet. I've actually just jumped in with more or less default settings. Now, No Man's Sky is sort of notoriously a little bit unpredictable. You'll get sharp stutters here and there and things like that, which just seem unavoidable. But for the most part, you can get it running okay and generally consistent, but you'll still get these sharp stutter spikes here and there, especially when doing things like getting into a new area of the planet or taking off, leaving the atmosphere or entering the atmosphere. And we'll go through that in a little bit. Actually, I wasn't getting too many. You can see on the FPS VR overlay, there were a couple then, just when I was speaking, sort of sharp stutters where the GPU and the CPU just seems to have a major, issue with things going on. It's the way the game seems to be rendered. It seems to be sort of engine-based issues that this game has. And by the way, I'm using the Pimax Crystal microphone to record this. I'm in headset now, and you can hopefully hear that the microphone is really good in the Pimax Crystal. Again, in terms of like the audio, I was describing the audio in my first video about the Valve Index. I would say it's not quite up to the level of the Valve Index, but actually, honestly can't say that. I don't know the actual audio itself. Whoops. But the microphone is, although very good in the Pimax Crystal, it's perhaps not quite up to the level of the Valve Index, which is still the best in-headset VR microphone that I've used. So let's just go through some of these settings. As you can see, at the moment we're hitting 90, but we do get these sharp drops here and there, and it's when you wander around, it seems to, when it's loading in assets and things like that. But look, we've got pretty solid 90 here, and then you'll notice probably when I go up into the air, yeah, it's still holding 90, but I am running resolution scaling in Steam VR at 50%. Now you can see on the FPS VR overlay the resolution that gives, and that will pop up in just a second. So 2288 by 2704. So we're not on a super high resolution, but it's pretty good. And in headset it looks great. So even if you run it at a slightly lower resolution in game, as you tend to have to do with No Man's Sky, you still get the benefit of that high display resolution. Means no screen door and that kind of stuff. What I will say is, because I'm not using any anti-aliasing, I am getting shimmering in the distance, on the trees, on those hills in the distance. I am getting some shimmering. So there's, if I could push resolution up, then I probably would, but I think I'd be knocking over the frame timings to maintain 90 FPS for the most part. And it looks absolutely stunning. Look at this, what a sight. But in any headset, no matter what I do, No Man's Sky will always have occasional stutters, no matter, whether it's a Quest 2, a Rift S, a Valve Index. There will always be some level of stutters here and there. And we'll go up into the spaceship in a second, just so you can see, because I suspect we'll get some as we leave the atmosphere. But once we're in space, it will probably maintain 90 still. Let's go see if we can follow those ships over as well for a little while. Oh, they're disappearing now. Missed them. But yeah, just to say, even at this low resolution, and it's not a low resolution really, of course, but the resolution scaling down to 50%, it still looks really, really good. But you do still get some of those little artifacts that you get if you're not anti-aliasing, and the anti-aliasing doesn't look great in No Man's Sky, in my opinion. In the Quest 2 you can use DLSS, and it actually looks great in that headset, but on the Valve Index when I use DLSS, it looked awful, and the same thing happens in the Crystal. Everything looks really blurry. It's like you're playing on a PlayStation. So we'll probably get some stutters as I fly around. This usually seems to make the game stutter a lot as you're going over the landscape at high speed. Yeah, you can see you do drop down. once again, this is more a fault with the game than any headset that I've used. It's just sort of the optimization of the consistency. But let's enter space. We'll get a cut off, I'm sure. Yeah, so yeah, you get a long pause there where it sort of leaves the atmosphere. But now, frame time wise, it's dropped down to, you know, around 5-6 milliseconds. So we should be able to maintain 90 pretty easily in space for the most part. There will still be stutters, it's just the way the game works. Look at that, absolutely stunning. Yeah, you notice it's on things like, actually, the things like that ship there looks really nice, even though it's, you know, graphically pretty basic. In terms of resolution and clarity, it does look really good. Because of this resolution I'm running at, I can see some shimmer on the edge, so there is some pixel crawl. You can see the pixels, but having that higher resolution display with 0 screen door still adds an overall benefit. And of course, I'm talking about a system, my system, it's got an RTX 3080 in it. If you were running on a higher system, you can push things up. And really, I've played Elite Dangerous, I've played this, a few other little things, but a lot of the stuff I've been playing has been really, really demanding on the PC. But these are the games that I'm most interested in, and of course I'm going to try a lot of different stuff. I want to try a few races, and also get into Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. But it does look really nice anyway. And I just wish the game was better optimized. I've said that many times on the channel before. It's just hasn't got a level of consistency. I did want to actually talk about, it's just reminding me, looking at the FPS VR overlay there is some chromatic aberration, and it's really noticeable on the FPS VR overlay in headset. So you look in certain directions, you'll get the chromatic aberration, the colours on the edges of boxes and things like that. There's definitely that, and that's probably due to the aspheric lenses. I think that's one of the disadvantages of aspheric lenses, this chromatic aberration issue. I personally don't find it that distracting anyway, but it's worth mentioning, of course. So that was relatively smooth, that entrance. Usually you'll get some stutters on that. I'm actually surprised at how well this is running, and there were some stutters there, so yeah. But for the most part, this is basically what I'm used to with No Man's Sky at this stage. And with updates, it will change. Sometimes you'll get a slight performance boost, sometimes you won't, and it will drop down, and then they'll patch it. And it's really inconsistent. So let me just go and land somewhere, and then we'll probably leave it there. I just wanted to make a quick video to show you some performance, and I'll be jumping into more performance tests in various games and stuff in the Crystal. And actually, just to mention on the controller tracking, so actually before I get onto the controller tracking, let me just also mention this. So let me get back up to 90 FPS. So now running at 90 FPS, there is something weird though. Let me see if I can get consistent 90 FPS. So when I'm moving my hand, I'm getting almost reprojection kind of artifacts, even though it's maintaining 90. On head movement, positional head movement, rotational head movement, I'm not getting any of those usual telltale signs that you run in reprojection, and I shouldn't be in reprojection. It's saying 90 on FPS VR. So it's bizarre that there is some kind of reprojection artifact on the hands when I'm moving them in front of me. And I don't know why that would be. I'm going to have to look into that, because it's so much like it's just reprojecting, and yet positional head movement, why do I keep running into those? Positional head movement, I'm getting no reprojection artifacts at all. And yet I am on the hands. Yeah, there's no reprojection artifacts. And yet the hands are, it's just really bizarre. I don't know what is going on with that. But that's a smaller issue, I guess. It doesn't bother me too much, but it's just a weird thing that I'd like to understand why that's happening. But in terms of controller tracking, I've used it a little bit in this game now. I would say the tracking volume isn't quite up to the standard of Quest 2, but overall tracking is pretty, it's fine. I honestly say I've had zero issues with the actual tracking, but I have noticed when it goes out of your view, I seem to lose tracking before I do on something like the Quest 2, for example. That's the point I'll make. But it certainly looks nice, and if it wasn't just for the general inconsistencies of No Man's Sky being a slight annoyance, this is a really nice experience. And yeah, 90 FPS, really smooth here. But that's it, yeah, so I'll leave it there. I wanted to quickly show No Man's Sky, and like I say, I will be getting into plenty more stuff, giving some pretty in-depth details on the performance on certain games as well, because that's one of the most important things. We want consistent performance in all of these games, and I'll try and push the resolution as high as I can on my system. I also think that most people probably still got a 3080 rather than a 4090 at the moment, but you never know. And of course, the people that will probably be picking up the Crystal will most likely have a higher end GPU. It's essential really with a headset anyway, but a 3080 is probably the minimum I can recommend at this moment. I wouldn't like to really use it on anything lower than that, because I am having to make small sacrifices here and there. But again, I'm playing really demanding games, so we'll get into all of that in more detail as I continue to try it. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.